Assalamu alaikum students. The topic for today is static data members and method declaration. Today we will see how can we declare static data members in our class and static methods in the class. Previously we have been creating non-static data members and methods in the class, that is we have not written the static keyword with either the data members nor with the methods. आज हम देखेंगे कि हमें स्टैटिक कीवर्ड कहाँ लिखना चाहिए और स्टैटिक कीवर्ड लिखने से किस तरह से डेटा मेंबर क्रिएशन और मेथड डिक्लेरेशन के अंदर डिफरेंस आता है. व्हाट इज द लॉजिक बिहाइंड क्रिएटिंग स्टैटिक डेटा मेंबर्स एंड स्टैटिक मेथड्स. So I will start with static members, static data members. Up till now you have been creating classes with data members and you know that the data for the class, it belongs to the object. For example, if you have a rectangle class with length and width as data members, so in the runner you will create a rectangle object and length and width belong to the created object. If you create another rectangle object, a new copy of length and width will be created in memory. If you create another object, another copy of the data will be created in memory. So the data of the class, it is generated for each object. Each object has its own copy of class data, right? So if you want that there should be some data of the class that is common to all the objects that are created in the runner, right? For example, you want to have a data member that is basically shared by all the objects that you have created in the runner, then you can create a static data member in your class, right? So let's go through the slides. Java supports definition of global methods and variables that can be accessed without creating objects. Such members are called static members, right? So static members basically इनको हम global का such concept नहीं है Java के अंदर, but by global you can say anything which is common to all objects. So if you want to create something as global, that is it is accessible to everyone, every object, then you can declare that data member as static. How to define it? We have to mark it with the static keyword, right? And it is useful when we want to create a variable or a data member that is common to all instances of the class. By instances I mean the objects, right? I will show you an example, and from that example you can see how the static data member, it is basically shared by all the objects. So I will switch on to the example first. Let's consider the class circle. You all are already familiar with the definition of class circle. Circle class has three non-static. I am calling them non-static because static keyword is not written here. X, Y and R are the non-static data members. X and Y determine the X and Y coordinates where the circle is created, and R represents the radius, right? Now I have created a static data member here by the name num circles, right? This data member is static. It means it will be common for all the objects that you will create in the runner. Let's see how it will work. So inside the constructor, this is again the definition of circle class along with the constructor. Let's see how I am using the static data members in the constructor. I have a default constructor which is not initializing my non-static data members, but it is initializing my static data members by 1. So num circles is incremented by 1 whenever the default constructor is called, right? Then I have the argument constructor for the circle class which takes 3 values from the client side and it assigns them to the object that will be returned by this constructor. And here also I have incremented the static data member for the class, right? So inside the constructor, what is the change? That now I am incrementing the static data member, right? And then I have other function definitions for the class like set and get functions for all the data members, right? So let's see how I have created runner for the circle class. Inside the runner I have created a circle object circle A using the argument constructor. Then I have created another circle B using the default constructor. Now I will go back into the circle definition. When I create the circle A using argument constructors, X, Y and R, they are given values, and here X, Y and R are given values, and num circle is incremented by 1, right? So initially num circle was 0, and when I call the constructor, num circle is now set to 1, right? Then I create the other object circle B using the default constructor. So control will go here, and here the data is not initialized, it means it will remain at the default values, and num circle will be incremented. As I told you that num circle is the static data member, so inside the memory num circle is not generated inside the address space of circle A and B. It is generated at a shared memory location, and now it will be incremented to 2, right? So right diagram shows, so this is a discussion on when I created static data members. It was in the next video I will discuss with that we can X, also y, create static methods in our classes. Values were 10, we'll 12, discuss 20, why static method and num circle was generated at a shared location. Thank you. Right, and num circle was set to 1. Then when I create this circle B, it was created using the default constructor, so it was generated here with this value, and num circle again was not created as a new variable, but it was again shared. So when two objects, they are basically sharing a single address space, so the changes by one object, they are seen by the other object. So when circle A incremented num circle by 1, and when circle B will again increment it, the value will be changed to 2 now. Right, so this example basically shows that the static data members of the class, they are created not at the address spaces dedicated to the objects, but they are created at a shared location, and that shared location is always accessed whenever you are talking about that static data member, right? So now we all understand that the static data member, it is created at a shared location. When we say that the static data member, it is created at a shared location, it means that it basically belongs to all the objects that you create in class, right? So you can also say that it belongs to the class itself, right? So there is a syntax that is allowed with static data members, that as the static data members, they basically belong to the class, so we can also access the static data members using the class name. Here you can see, as num circle was declared public, so it is accessible in the runner, and I have basically printed it using the class name. Why is it possible? Because it is a static data member. You can understand it by analyzing that it basically, the num circle, it was a static variable, so it belongs to all the objects. So you can say it belongs to the class itself, right? So the compiler allows us to access the static data members using the class name. Now 2 will be printed here. As the static data member also belongs to the object, so I can also write here print circle A dot num circle. I can also write circle B dot num circle. That is, you can access it using the object name, and you can also access it using the class name. Please remember that class name access is only allowed with static data members. It is not allowed with non-static data members. You cannot write circle dot x, circle dot y, or circle dot radius. It is not allowed, because obviously the reason is that the x, y, and r, they belong to circle A or circle B, right? They do not belong to the class. But num circle, it belongs to the class. It is always there, right? And even you can access it with before the creation of objects, right? So from this example and the theory, you now understand that in your class there may be static data members in addition to the non-static data members. The static data members, they are this slide shows the difference, that the static data members, they are basically created per class, one copy per class, right? It is for all the objects. All objects share that copy. And the non-static variables, they are created one copy per object. Every object has its own instance variable. The data members, they belong to the object, okay? So x, y, and r, they will be generated for circle A separately in memory and separately for circle B. Some other important points which include that when we should use static variables, we should use a static variable when all objects must use the same copy of the variable. There are certain cases when there is some value which is shared by all objects, or which should be updated by all objects. That value can be declared as static, right? You must analyze which data member should be static and which should be non-static. Another important point is that static variables, they have class scope. That is why we can access them using the class name, right? But it is not a restriction. You can also access the static variables using the object name, because it belongs to the object as well, right? If the static data member of the class they are private, a class private static members can be accessed by client code only through the methods of the class. जैसे आज मैंने आपको एग्जांपल जो दिखाई थी उसमें मैंने आपको रनर में circle डॉट num circles कॉल किया था, वो इसलिए क्योंकि वो स्टैटिक डेटा मेंबर पब्लिक था. अगर स्टैटिक डेटा मेंबर प्राइवेट होगा तो उस पर वही इनकैप्सुलेशन रूल्स लगेंगे जो कि प्राइवेट डेटा पर होते हैं, कि वो आउटसाइड एक्सेसिबल नहीं होगा. ठीक है, क्योंकि वो प्राइवेट होने की वजह से. ठीक है, सो पब्लिक है तो यू कैन एक्सेस इट इन द रनर यूजिंग क्लास नेम और ऑब्जेक्ट नेम, बट इफ़ इट इज़ प्राइवेट तो ऑब्वियसली उसके ऊपर इनकैप्सुलेशन रूल्स लग जाएंगे और फिर वो रनर के अंदर एक्सेसिबल नहीं रहेगा. सो दिस एंड्स आवर डिस्कशन ऑन स्टैटिक वेरिएबल्स, कि स्टैटिक वेरिएबल्स हम क्लास में बना सकते हैं, कब बनाने चाहिए, उनका पर्पस क्या है. नेक्स्ट वीडियो के अंदर हम देखेंगे डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ स्टैटिक मेथड्स व्हेन दे आर रिक्वायर्ड एंड व्हाट इज़ देयर सिंटैक्स. थैंक यू.